Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Welcome. Happy Monday. Thank you for being patient with me. I saw my husband Anthony Garcia music in the chat. I appreciate Anthony. I there was a bad accident on the road and I was stuck in traffic for a while, and finally I followed some other cars and found a back way home. Um, but yeah, it looked like a pretty bad accident. Don't I don't know. This is like a two-lane highway. There's a lot of country highways here. So whenever I see an accident like that, I'm like, how on earth did that even happen? It was a big trucker was involved. I think sometimes people are driving when they're sleepy. You should just pull over. My dad taught me that when I was young. Just pull over. You don't want to lose time, but it's a lot worse if you lose. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of time and possibly your life if you keep driving while you're sleepy. When you can just pull over, take a 10-minute nap, set your alarm, and it kind of resets your body and you get right back on the road. I've done that many times. Just like 10 minutes to sleep. Okay. Therese. Hey, Therese. You mean you don't sit around all day just waiting for your show to start? Let me tell you something. I had to get my hair cut this morning, and it's been a while since I've had a really bad haircut, but I had one today. Like 20 years ago, especially in the part of the South I was in, a lot of people didn't know how to cut curly hair, so you always had to be very careful, and if you went to a new hair salon, you had to ask them, "Do you know how to cut curly hair?" You had to make sure, because sometimes they would say, "Yeah, of course," and they don't. If you have curly hair, you know what I'm talking about. You already know. If you don't have curly hair, this might be news to you, but, and it doesn't matter. It can be thin like mine and curly, like thin kind of hair, or thick and curly, or big, tight kinks or bigger kinks. It doesn't matter. It's still, they have to know how to cut it. And, all these years later in my 40s, it's like, for the most part, people seem to have learned that now. Like a lot of people seem to know that knowledge. So I don't even ask anymore. But I went to this cheap place I've been going to. It's like a different person every time. That's also what you get, a cheap salon. And man, the worst one I've ever had. Andrew, no, they don't wet it. In fact, I told her, I was like, no, you have to wet it. You have to cut it when it's wet. You have to cut the curls individually. You can't. And instead, let's brush it while it's dry and get this big frizz. Like I stuck my hand on one of those balls where your hair just goes like this and just this frizzy mess. And then let's try and cut it like a straight person, like a straight hair. And I just sat there like, because I don't want to be, condescending. I tried a few times to say, "This isn't really how it's done." But yeah, yeah, it was pretty terrible. Okay, that's all. That's what I was doing. If you are in cosmetology school and they're not teaching you how to cut curly hair, you should ask them. Mistakes were made. Yes. Okay. Well, welcome. Uh Thanks for being patient. I hope you guys had a good weekend. I certainly did. My church on the square in Georgetown, Texas, we have a new location. I think I've mentioned this. We're renting out another church, and so we meet at 2:00 on Sundays in Georgetown at the I think it's called St. John's. It's a Methodist church. It's a really beautiful little church. And so that was my first time back since we had been in Europe for 5 weeks, my husband and I, and that was really great to be able to see everybody. So, and then that was yesterday, and then worked Saturday, so it was a pretty busy weekend, and, I'm happy to be back. I'm glad to hang out with you guys. Um, Cougar Bait says deba oh, yes, this Cougar Bait hat. I've already told the story of that hat. Okay. So I wanna talk about something interesting that I saw. I don't know if you guys saw this. There's always these, funny headlines where all of mainstream media is sort of reporting the same thing. And I saw this last week and I just thought it was hilarious. There was all these headlines here. Let me put on the screen. There's all these headlines that said Look at these. This is from the New York Post. Millennial and Gen Z women find that partners listening to Joe Rogan's podcast is a red flag. Here's another headline. The girls think listening to Joe Rogan's podcast is a red flag. Here's another one. Study finds women are turned off by men who listen to Joe Rogan podcast. Really? Women are turned off by men who listen to Joe Rogan podcast. I always find these things interesting because then I want to read the poll. I want to read the survey. I want to see who they surveyed. Because I don't trust headlines. And I don't think people, a lot of times these so-called reporters have not done their due diligence. They just want to go with a clickbait headline like this and something that confirms their biases, because these are usually leftists writing these headlines and they are unhappy with Joe Rogan because he's not the kind of liberal that he's not a leftist. He's just a plain old liberal, and they hate liberals. So here's another one. Majority of women consider listening. Majority of women. Wait till you see what this poll is. You're going to laugh. Majority of women consider listening to Joe Rogan podcast a red flag, study finds. A majority of women do that? Really? No, it's not a majority of women. Wait till you see. Okay. Here's another. Joe Rogan's podcast labeled a red flag impacting dating lives of young couples. If you saw this, you'd be like, wow. Wow, if I'm a young man, I better not listen to Joe Rogan, right? Look at all these headlines. All these headlines are telling me that women, majority of women even, they don't want me listening to Joe Rogan. It's impacting dating. Is it? Here's another. MAGA is the leading red flag for 18 to 34-year-old women, while men are turned off by women with political OP. Political, I don't know what the rest of that headline is, but look at this under here, though. Men are turned on by girls who drink cow's milk instead of non-dairy alternatives. Heck yeah. Based, regular milk. I'm so tired of the non-dairy alternatives. I've gotten now to where if I'm at a cafe and I order a coffee and I say I'd like a coffee with milk, that's usually what I get. A coffee with steamed milk. It's also called a cafe au lait, but a lot of young people don't know what it's called. So I'll have a coffee, a drip coffee with steamed milk. And then they usually ask me in some of these hipster places, they go, oat milk or almond milk? And I'm like, real milk. No, real. It's almost offensive. Do you know what I mean? If I wanted a fake milk, I would have said coffee with a fake milk, and I would have told you what kind. But I said coffee with milk. It's not Sid's milk. I'm not gonna add some qualifier to it to make your fake milks seem more legitimate. It's just milk is milk. I want milk. That's what I asked for. Like, that's what it is. Almond milk is not milk. No matter how much you say trans women are women, they're not women. Almond milk is not milk. Coconut milk is not milk. I want real milk. Okay. This is a little bit of a rant. I don't know. I'm an interesting mood today. Okay, but I thought that was funny. It says men are turned on by girls who drink cow's milk instead of non-dairy alternatives. Anyway, look, there's a lot of these headlines. There's like hundreds of them. Gen Z and millennials reveal their red flags, and here are all the folks who aren't getting dates. Young women find Joe Rogan's podcast to be a red flag. Study finds majority of women, there's that phrase again, find it a turnoff if partner listens to Joe Rogan. Here's another one. It's Rogan's fault I'm single. Red flag alert on Joe Rogan leaves fans absolutely fuming after study comes up. Okay, so I was curious about this poll, so I went and found it. I found the survey, and I found the places that reported on it. They did report on some of the other interesting questions about economic security and stuff. They asked these young people about how much debt they have and questions about the economy. And some of the articles, a few of them reported on those things, but I wanted to see everything they asked them. And I wanted to know, well, who are you talking to? Like, who are you interviewing? First of all, how did these young people vote? Are they predominantly leftists that you're polling? And that matters. And so I just was curious, and I find surveys very interesting. So I found this survey, and we're going to look at some of the. Here we go. We're going to look at the raw results, which I think is fascinating. This was a survey that was done by Change Research, and anybody can use them to do different kinds of surveys. And I couldn't find at first, and none of the articles say who commissioned this survey, but if you go to the raw results, which it took me a while to find that link, just a little bit to find that link. If you go to that, then you can see that it looks like it was a Teen Vogue commissioned survey, because Teen Vogue is listed on some of the back end stuff. But it didn't say. Okay, here we go. First of all, let's just put up their summary, and then we're going to look at the more interesting. Yeah. Once we get to the other tab, you'll see what I'm saying. Okay, this tab here. Can you guys see that? This is like all the raw data from this. And I don't know if you can see it, but up in the upper left corner there, that's the only place where I saw a name where you could kind of see who had commissioned this survey. So I am also interested in who's writing the questions, like who's asking. So it's up in the upper left corner, you can see Teen Vogue Youth Voter Poll, August 2023. So it looks like Teen Vogue commissioned this. So Teen Vogue wrote the questions. But let's go back to this one. This is their overview of the study. Now, again, this is the survey from which all of those hundreds of Joe Rogan headlines are coming from. That's the one thing that they all reported on. That's what they all took from this, right? They did this so they could maybe put out headlines like that. Okay. Methodology. It says Change Research surveyed 1,033 registered voters ages 18 to 34 nationwide from August 25th to September 1st of 2023. Change Research self-funded this research for public release. You self-funded it. Well, how? I would like to ask them, and I didn't see any of these reporters ask them, how are you related to Teen Vogue? Did Teen Vogue pay for this? Did they come up with the questions? None of the reporters asked that. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, it says they self-funded it. We use the following sources to recruit respondents: targeted advertisements using the Meta advertising platform, and SMS text messages. So they surveyed 1,000 people, 1,000 registered voters between the ages of 18 and 34 nationwide. So this is US women. And I love the fact that the headlines are like, the majority of women find the Joe Rogan podcast to be a red flag. Okay. That's a funny headline based on this survey of 1,000 people age 18 to 34 in the US. Okay. So it says, regardless of which of these sources a respondent came from, so whether they came from Facebook, so it says the Meta advertising platform, they mean Facebook. So whether they came from Facebook or from text messages, they sent them to a SurveyMonkey website to take this poll. Ads placed on social media targeted likely voters nationwide. Those who indicated they were not registered to vote were terminated. So one of the questions on here you'll see is, are you registered to vote? And if you answered no, then they ended the poll. Like you didn't get to continue the survey because they only wanted to talk to registered voters. Those who indicated they're over the age of 34 were also terminated. So they didn't get to finish the survey. As the survey fielded, Change Research used dynamic online sampling, adjusting ad budgets, lowering budgets for ads targeting groups that were overrepresented raising budgets for ads targeting groups that were underrepresented. The survey was conducted in English. The survey was conducted online by Change Research. So it goes, post stratification weighting was performed on age, gender, region, education, ethnicity, and 2020 presidential vote. Weighting parameters were based on the demographic composition of likely voters nationwide obtained from the voter file. The modeling margin of error for this survey was 3.4%, which uses effective sample sizes that adjust for the design effect of weighting. And then they have this little thing where they go and say, we adopt the Pew Research Center's convention for the term model margin of error, et cetera, et cetera. Let's move on. So these are the questions they asked. This is the poll. If you got this text message or you got this Facebook ad that you clicked on it, if you were one of these 1,033 people, so roughly 1,000 people who took this survey that all these headlines are based on, this is the poll. This is the actual, look at all the questions they ask. It's a lot of interesting questions. Funny that the headlines were just all about Joe Rogan, because there's a ton, there's pages and pages of questions here. Okay, here's some of the questions they ask. Are you male, female, transgender, non-binary, non-conforming, other? Okay, so whoever wrote this, first question, and it looks like to me Teen Vogue may have written this. I would love to ask if they did. Whoever wrote this, though, you can tell already what part of what some of their beliefs are based on what options they include here. A normal person would just say, are you male or female? There we go. Just by including all of these options, although I am curious to see how these young people are answering, but that tells me a lot right there. Okay. Number 2, in what year were you born? Okay, and then that's where they terminated the survey if they were older than 34. They got where they live, their zip code, etc. They asked them, this was kind of interesting. Do you live in the same place you grew up in? Do you live in a similar place you grew up in? A somewhat different place to the place you grew up in, or a completely different place to the place you grew up in? And they go on to ask questions about race and how much college they've attained, etc. So I did some more digging and I found the raw data from this survey, the answers. So let's look at this. And I'll make this a little larger. So here's the answers. This is like, maybe some people aren't as interested in surveys as I am, but I find this. What are the young people thinking? Adam in the chat. Hello, Adam. He says, what do you, as a cis white woman, look for in a leftist eunuch? Sounds like a biased question. Do you drink, like, if it were a based person, they would ask questions like, which milk do you prefer? Coconut milk? Almond milk? Soy milk? Real milk? That's the question. I'm kidding. I know there's some nut milk drinkers in the chat and soy milk drinkers, and don't think Keri doesn't like you. It's okay. These are the best things to make jokes about. These little preferences that we all have that are different. Food and stuff like that. Those are the best things to make jokes about. Because one of my most controversial opinions in that area is like, some people like to eat bacon and some people are normal. I hate bacon. Okay, let's continue. So I'm going to get down to some of the most interesting. Here we go. How did you vote in the 2020 election for president? Or for some reason, were you unable to vote? So of these 1,033 people they interviewed, the ones from whom they're pulling and drawing these headlines that say the majority of women find it to be a red flag if a man listens to Joe Rogan. This is who those people are. Look at the August, it's the 3rd column here, 'cause they did this survey 3 times. It's this column right here. So, of those 1,033 people, this is who they're asking that question of. 45% of them voted for Joe Biden. So, a better headline would be, "Hey, in a group of 1,000 people, approximately half of whom voted for Biden, approximately half the same percentage of those people find it to be a red flag if you listen to Joe Rogan." That's what it would be. A better headline would be, "Hey, young registered voters who voted Democratic don't like it when you listen to Joe Rogan." That's a better headline. That's a more accurate headline. Young Democrats, young Democratic women, young women who voted Democrat, young women who voted for Biden don't like it if a man listens to Joe Rogan. That's a more accurate headline. So 45% of the people in this survey voted for Biden. That's a lot of misled young people, by the way. Pretty sad. I could say something more uncharitable, but I won't. But they are misled. It's pretty astonishing to me that it's even that high. Okay, so 25% of the people who answered this survey voted for Trump. 6% voted for Joe Jorgensen, and 13% were either not registered or too young to vote in the last election. And 11% of them did not vote in the last election. Okay, so again, roughly half voted for Biden. How likely are you to vote in the November election for Congress and other offices? And this is kind of interesting. You can see 79% of them say, yes, definitely. I'm definitely voting. Now, again, this is already self-selected. They've already taken out from this survey people who are not registered to vote. So these are young people who are motivated enough to become registered to vote. These are young registered voters. 79% say, yes, definitely they're voting for in the November election for Congress. So these are very politically driven young people. How motivated are you to vote in the November election on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 means not motivated at all? This is not as interesting. Let's move on. Oh, this one's interesting. Now, again, these are young people age 18 to 34 who are registered to vote, roughly half of whom voted for Biden in the last election. Which of the following do you regularly use? Select all that apply. And then there's a whole list of social media. So most of the young people are using YouTube. 79% of them use YouTube. 70% of them use Instagram. Instagram's number 2. Facebook is number 3. Again, this is among young people who are registered voters, the majority of whom are voted for Biden. So you know what's interesting, what's not up here? Twitter, it's not in the top 3. I've always thought I think we've been taught to think that young people think Facebook is for old people, and they're not on Facebook, but Facebook's number 3 here. Kind of interesting. Number 4, streaming services. Number 5, TikTok. Facebook beats TikTok among these young people. Number 6, Reddit. Number 7, podcasts. Number 8, Snapchat. That's still around? Snapchat beats Twitter among these young people who voted for Biden. There's Twitter way down in the middle, slightly above Pinterest. Actually, it's almost 10 points above Pinterest, but still, it's just right above Pinterest on the list. They really have a bias against Twitter or X now that Elon Musk has purchased it. They really view it as some right-wing thing. The headlines that came from this survey could have easily said, "The majority of women find it problematic if you go on Twitter." If you listen to Joe Rogan, look at the percentage here of the ones that use Twitter. Only 28% of them use Twitter. And remember, how many of this group voted for Trump? Only 25%. So it looks like it might potentially be the Trump voters who are using Twitter. Maybe none of the 45% who voted Biden use Twitter. I would like to see these I would like to see the individual data. That would be really interesting to see. If you voted for Biden, how likely are you to use Twitter? Like, among just the Biden voters, I'd like to see this list of what social media platforms they use. Okay, let's move on. Here's the podcast question. Here's the question from which they, the question that launched 1,000 corporate media headlines. Here's the question. Which of the following, so if they answered that they listen to podcasts in that list, then they get this question. Wow, so it's not even all 1,000 people. It's just the ones who selected podcasts as a source of as one of the things they use or listen to. So who knows how many people it is? It's not all 1,033. So if they selected yes for podcasts, they use podcasts, then they get this question. Which of the following podcasts do you listen to? Select all that apply. The number one answer is the Joe Rogan podcast at 20%. So are you telling me that all of those corporate media headlines could have said the majority of young people's favorite podcast, number one podcast, is the Joe Rogan Experience? Yes, that would have been just as accurate as the headlines they chose to run, which is the majority of women say that if you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, that's a red flag. They could have done that. There could have been thousands of corporate media headlines that said the majority of young people's the majority of young people's number one most listened to podcast is the Joe Rogan podcast, but they didn't say that. But it is. Here it is coming in at 20%. Now, again, remember who's taken this survey. Only 25% of the young people who took this survey voted for Trump. 45% of them voted for Biden. So, again, it would be more interesting to see this cross-referenced with, like, I would want to know of that people who are listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, what's the breakdown, which ones, how many people who voted for Biden are listening, etc. So the number 2 most listened to podcast here is The Daily. Oh, something else this tells me, by the way, is that leftists don't listen to podcasts. Leftists don't listen to podcasts. Young people who are leftists, at least, that's who's in this survey, they don't listen to podcasts, or if they do, there are no clear, successful, popular ones like there are among the wrong thinkers. Among the wrong thinkers, you've got conservative shows like the Ben Shapiro Show. You've got conservative shows like the Candace Owens Show. You've got liberal but wrong thinker shows like the Joe Rogan Experience. There's a lot of popular shows among wrong thinkers. It seems to be that more independent-minded people they're more likely to listen to podcasts because look at this list. There's nothing on here. The second one is called The Daily. I actually should have already looked that one up. I'm not familiar with that one. I bet that is that what is that one? Is that like a lefty podcast? Here's what here's what it says about The Daily. Oh, gross. It's the New York Times. It's their podcast. It's a mainstream it's a cathedral elitist podcast. There we go. The Daily. This is how the news should sound. 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Hosted by Michael Barbaro and Sabrina Tavernise and powered by the New York Times journalism. Contact us at the daily at nytimes.com. That's number. Okay, so there is one lefty podcast on here coming in at 17%. An establishment podcast is the lefty podcast. How funny is that? My husband and I were just talking last night about how everything has changed from when we were young, you know? It used to be I'm just speaking here in generalities, but it used to be when we were young, it was like it seemed like the right wing were the ones who supported war and the government were, like, all up the government's butt and, trusted the government, and they were the ones who really were into, corporations and banks, and, like, they were really into establishment crap, um, and now it's completely the opposite where it's like the left wing are the ones who are, like, supporting war and cheering for war and putting flags that represent war on their profiles and bumper stickers, and they're the ones who are, all up the government's butt and trusting the government, the lefties and big pharma, the left is totally in bed with, "Oh, we love you, big pharma now." And corporations, they love them, and the banks, and they listen to all this establishment crap like the New York Times. It's so weird, isn't it, how things are upside down? Anyway, so there is one lefty podcast on here. Number 3, you've got a conservative one, The Ben Shapiro Show. Number 4, This American Life. That's more lefty. There it is at 10%. Uh, Number 7, Pod Save America at 7%. Then you've got that's tied with the Candace Owens Show, a conservative one. You've got a Serials on here. That's a true crime one. Anyway, so that this is not I was wrong, by the way. This is not the red flag question. That comes a little bit later. So this is not the question that launched 1,000 corporate media headlines that's coming up, but this one could have. This one could have been the question. If they had taken the answer to this one and said, the majority of young people, their number one podcast is Joe Rogan Experience. If they didn't say that. Okay. Which of the following best describes you? This is interesting. 61% say, I care a lot about voting and I urge friends and family to participate in every election. So again, as we've already noted, these are politically engaged young people. They're already registered to vote. And we saw in a previous question, they're, a very large percentage of them are very excited to vote in the congressional elections coming up. They also urge everyone they know to vote. How would you say things are going in each of the following places? Look at this. They don't have a lot of confidence in the future. They don't have a lot of confidence about the way things are headed in the US. This is pretty revealing. So how would you say things are going in each of the following places? Now, they have more confidence as you get smaller. Like if you look at their state, they have a little bit more confidence at their city or town, a little bit more confidence in their neighborhood, even a little bit more confidence. But in general, like the more you zoom out, they don't have confidence at all. Would you say things are going in the right direction in the United States? Only 4% of them say yes. 4% of them say the US is headed in the right direction. 73% of them say the US is headed in the wrong direction. And then if you look, you can see it becomes more those numbers kind of flip just a little bit if you drill down to smaller geographical areas like neighborhood. Which statement do you agree with most, even if it isn't exactly right? So 34% of them say America's going to get by like we always do. But pretty close behind that, 28% of them say America's best days are behind us. Only 16% say America's best days are ahead of us. How much do you feel like you can personally affect change in your community? And you can see here that at the bottom, they've summarized it because they have a lot of different options, but the total of a lot or some is 48%, and the total of not too much or not at all is 52%. So basically, half of them say, I don't think I can really do anything affect change. And the other half say, I'm totally affecting some change. Or I think I could a little bit. Then they asked that. That was about their community. Then they asked the same question about America. How much do you think you can personally affect change in America? A higher percentage here, 66% say not too much or not at all. And 34% say a lot or some. Did David Hogg take this poll? Has he aged out yet? Because he probably said, totally a lot. I can change it all. Take away your guns. Question 12. What are the main reasons why you haven't voted in the past? Again, this is a survey. We're going through a survey that they asked of 1,033 young people, about roughly half of whom voted for Biden in the last election. These are all registered voters, young people who are registered to vote and who seem highly politically motivated. So what are the main reasons why you maybe haven't voted in the past? And the highest reported answer here, 47%, politicians don't keep their promises. Well, at least 40% of them are awake to that. 42%, voting doesn't change anything. Have you ever done any of these actions? Number one, 83% of them have signed a petition. 62% of them have donated to a nonprofit or a community organization. 59% have volunteered with a nonprofit or a community organization. 47%, so roughly half of them have written or called a politician's office, et cetera, et cetera. They should have asked, have you ever been part of a cancellation mob online and tried to cancel someone for having different political beliefs than you? Have you ever picked up a digital pitchfork and tried to go after and mob someone for not being as politically pure as you, for not being on the same side as you? What factors made you decide to take that action? And it says the issue impacted their community. If you cared a lot about an issue, would you ever do any of the following? This is more of the same. Would you sign a petition? Would you? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. This one's interesting. What kinds of issues? So this is the issues they're interested in. What kinds of issues would you volunteer for or donate money to if asked? And again, you can see there's a little bit of insight here into the breakdown of these voters and where they line up on the current like political system. So it starts with 70% something that's pretty bipartisan, help victims of natural disasters. Yes, that's awesome. 69% homelessness, poverty alleviation. Number 3, 66% of them said protect the environment in your area. Number 4, 65% that said they would fight racism and discrimination. Number 6, 63% said mentoring children and youth. 61% said protecting abortion rights. 60% said fighting climate change. Wow. That tied with 60% would ensure fair elections. It's a little bit positive. 56% says LGBTQ plus rights. If you keep scrolling down, oh, they have criminal justice reform on here, fighting for gun safety, registering new voters, making marijuana legal. Finally, way down here at 35%, you have protecting gun rights. So again, there's a smaller percentage of libertarians and conservatives and old school liberals taking this poll included in the survey. Protecting gun rights is way down here. The right above legalization of psychedelics, and religious causes is down here, 23%. And prevent abortion access is down here at 11%. Now they get into affirmative action questions. Let me take just a second and check in on the checks. I've been looking at you guys if you have any questions or anything. Hey, Cheeky Bear. Thanks for hanging out today. Hey, Epic Mike. Good to see you. Adam says, have you always used correct pronouns? We should do our own survey. I think we could have some really funny questions. Have you always used they, them? Therese says, "I like the 2% who don't care about anything." Yeah, here we go. Which of these issues would you, volunteer for or donate money for? Nothing. Those people are honest. I appreciate it. I appreciate their honesty. They probably know this is all a racket anyway. Like, I'm not gonna give my time to any of this crap. Okay, so here we get into the affirmative action question. In a recent case, so they mentioned the recent Supreme Court decision. In a recent case against the University of North Carolina and Harvard College, the Supreme Court ruled that the use of affirmative action in college admissions to be unconstitutional. Do you support or oppose the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action in college admissions? I wish the thing about these questions is the left has done such a good job of, first of all, forcing everyone to conform and use this phrase affirmative action, right? That is Orwellian language. That is PC language, and it's meant to change the way you think about things, to change the way you think about something. And we just accepted it and all started using it. The same way they want us to come to all start using pronouns now and to use cis and things like that as if it's normal. They want to change the way you think about things. And if you think about like a rat in a maze, like if your brain is a mouse in a maze and it can go any number of directions, they close off different avenues, different paths with language. So there are whole entire avenues of thought that can keep you from going down by changing the way you say things. This is entirely true. This is how you control people. So this is not really a diss on the survey makers or the question writers, because we've all adopted this language now. Even the Supreme Court used this language. We all use it. We let them win that one. Affirmative action. What affirmative action describes is discrimination, racial discrimination, and sex-based discrimination. That's what it describes. It means discriminating against people of a particular race or a particular sex. That's what it means. Privileging or prioritizing people because of their race or because of their sex, and disadvantaging other people because of their race or sex. And so the Supreme Court found that, hey, guess what? We think you should end affirmative action because it's discriminatory. It took us a long time to figure that out, right? Because of what they named it. They couldn't very well call it the racial and gender-based discrimination practice in college. They can't call it that, but that's what it is. And so the Supreme Court finally said, yeah, we got to end this because we're discriminating against too many Asian kids. It's not fair if you're Asian. And so anyway, that's just a little aside there about this question. So they ask these young people, 1,033 young people, roughly half of whom voted for Biden. They asked them, do you support or oppose the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action in college admissions? The total who support the decision are 31%. That's right in line with what we've already seen in this survey, that it's a very small percentage of these people who are conservative, libertarian. It's a smaller percentage who are conservative, libertarian, old school liberal. 47%, so almost exactly the same percentage who voted for Biden, this is total oppose. That's every type of oppose, every option. So roughly half of them, which is about the same, who are taking the survey who voted for Biden, say they oppose this Supreme Court decision. That's a bummer. That's sad, young people. I thought you said earlier that fighting racism was one of your big goals, fighting sexism and racism. Because if you really believe that, if you really are against racism and sexism, you would be on board with the Supreme Court decision. You would be celebrating it. You would be happy that they struck down this antiquated system that privileged people because of race or sex and disadvantaged other people because of race or sex. It doesn't treat people as individuals. So then this is so funny because I saw a lot of people when this Supreme Court decision came down, a lot of people on Twitter, leftists who opposed the decision, they would try to get you in a gotcha, and they'd be like, well, what do you think about legacy admissions? I'm like, it's not a gotcha because I don't like legacy admissions either. I don't think they should do them. And most of the people I know who are libertarian or conservative or, centrist or what have you, liberal, old school liberals, they don't like, none of us like legacy admissions. It's not a gotcha. Let's get rid of those too. So they asked that here. Many colleges practice legacy admissions. If you don't know what legacy admission is, much like affirmative action or the race and sex-based discrimination, it's where the college gives you they privilege you if you have someone in your family who went to that school, and they disadvantage you if there's nobody in your family who went to that school. And the reason why that sucks is it doesn't treat you like an individual. And you're probably, if it's a really expensive school, it privileges people who have wealthy family members. It also privileges, yes, it privileges white people, because stretching back, there are some schools where you couldn't attend if you were not white, or you could not attend if you were Jewish, or you could not attend if you were a woman. But so legacy admissions, I think you need to get rid of. Who benefits from stuff like legacy admissions? Dumb, already privileged people who are privileged in other ways. George W. Bush, for example. W benefits from legacy. So it says many colleges practice legacy admissions, in which they give preferential treatment to applicants whose parents have attended the college and may have donated to it. Do you support or oppose legacy admissions? And surprise, surprise, 80%. That's one of the highest, that's a high consensus for this survey. 80% oppose it. That means it's not just the 45% of leftists who are taking this survey who oppose it. It's 45% joined by a bunch of the conservatives and libertarians. They all oppose it. The majority of people taking it oppose it. 80% oppose. 13% support. Last year, President Biden announced, okay, now we're getting into student loan debt. Last year, President Biden announced a student loan debt relief plan, which would cancel up to $20,000 of debt for Pell Grant borrowers and up to $10,000 for the majority of borrowers. This summer, the Supreme Court struck down President Biden's student loan debt relief plan. Do you support or oppose the Supreme Court's decision to block Biden's debt relief plan? The total number of people who oppose, 65%. So that's like all the lefties taking this, plus some of the middle of the road people or conservatives, who knows. They don't want to have to pay back their debt. They don't want to have to pay it back. Well, guess what? Somebody has to pay for it. Somebody has to. It doesn't just go away. The next generation, we've already put those of you who have kids, like when I say our, I don't mean mine individually. I mean ours as a society. The kids, the grandkids that are coming, they're going to be paying back so many of our debts already. And you're basically saying, yeah, stick them with this too, or stick other taxpayers with this. Why? I thought you believed in fairness, lefties. Who is to blame? Now, look, this is funny. Who's to blame for the blocking of student loan forgiveness? Select all that apply. So 70% of them say the Supreme Court. 58% say Republicans in Congress. What? 50% say special interest groups. Like the American taxpayer, are we a special interest group? Taxpayers? 18% say Democrats in Congress. What? None of the above, ties with Joe Biden at 15%. My husband's being funny. Thank you, sir. Stop. Thank you for the coffee. Anthony Garcia music, ladies and gentlemen. I wanna have him come on a show again soon. We had fun at the one in Switzerland. Arnawa, good comment in the chat says, "So they don't think college is good, but they want other people to pay for it." Yeah. Cheeky Mare says, "I paid back all $62,000 in 32 months, working 3 jobs. Suck it up and pay off your own effing debt." I paid off all my own debt too, and that's kinda my thoughts about it. Oh, Pirate Toski's here. Hello, Pirate. Give it up for Pirate. He says, "Only 33 out of 62 people support the like button. Let's increase that." Yes, hit the like button if you wanna help the channel. I didn't say at the beginning, but, if you've been hanging out here a while and you like what we do on Deprogram and you like our various shows, you can always become a paid subscriber and help us out. Even $1 a month helps. You can do that here at YouTube by becoming a member, and you can become a member at Patreon, Locals, or Subscribestar. And if you can't do that, but you wanna help, hitting the like button helps, and leaving a comment actually helps a lot with the algorithm to recommend videos. So, there you go. Pirate says, "I've been here the whole time." I just wasn't very observant at the beginning, Pirate. Good to see you. Okay, let's continue with this. I don't know if you guys find this is interesting. I love reading through survey results and stuff. So, they asked these young people, "In your view, do you think college education is a good investment or not?" And 67% said sometimes it's a good investment. 17% says always a good investment. 13% says rarely a good investment. 2% says never a good investment, and 2% says not sure. How valuable are each of the following types of higher education? And then they have all these different ones with different, you could see it's a whole chart laid out here where you can select, very valuable, not valuable at all, etc., not sure. Medical school ha comes in pretty high with a score of 94% valuable. They view that as valuable. I'd say there are, yes. For the most part, I think college has been corrupted to such a degree that if your kids are not grounded very securely in their values and belief system, that you are sending them into a lion's den, and for the most part, without a lot of return. That's undergraduate degrees. But most of the schools are completely corrupted by social justice ideology, also called woke. And if your kid is not resilient and very confident, if they're going through anything, if they're going through that awkward time or they're questioning things or they struggle with anything, it's a lion's den, and it may not be worth it. It may be better to go to trade school or to find some private school for them, some private Christian school or something, because you risk you're basically sending them to an indoctrination factory. I saw something this weekend about a mom who just dropped her kid off at school and said on the doors they had little, uh, things on each door that wanted the kid to write down their name and their pronouns. And she was like, "Oh, I have a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach." It's like, "Yeah, you should." It's an indoctrination factory. Asking pronouns asking pronouns like that, that's indoctrination. Assuming it is a ritual of social justice or woke religion. It's akin to like asking that of everyone, like, "What are your pronouns?" It's akin to if everybody I met, I asked them to recite the creed of my religion back to me. That's what it is. It's a ritual. And by doing that, that school is assuming that every kid is in that woke social justice religion, and if they're not, they're gonna make them participate. They're gonna force them to participate in it. So, for the most part, I would say a lot of undergraduate degrees, maybe not worth it in the cost benefit analysis. But for something like this, like If they wanna be a doctor, yes, totally valuable. You still need to go. So med school's on here at 94%, is the highest. And then you scroll down, you can see in terms of what these young people think is valuable, they've got apprenticeship is number 2, bachelor's degree in science, tech, engineering, or math. They kind of have figured this out a little bit. I don't see women's studies degree, or now they call it gender studies because women's studies is triggering. But I don't see gender studies degree up here as, very valuable. I don't see critical race theory the critical race theory degree up here. They do have a if you scroll down, bachelor's degree in a humanities subject, that comes in at 61% think that's valuable. I don't know, honey. I don't know how valuable that is. They put associate's degree or a 2-year college degree coming in higher than a bachelor's degree. Interesting. Okay. What do you think are the reasons to pursue higher education, if any? And oh, this takes you to a spreadsheet where you can see all their individual answers, and this is the can you guys see this on the screen? We're not gonna go through this right now because I'd have to sort them and everything, but up here on the left, you can see Teen Vogue again. You see that? Teen Vogue youth voter poll. It's so weird they don't just say out loud, "This is a Teen Vogue poll," but it's in their Google spreadsheet. Okay, we're gonna scroll back down to where we were. We're getting to the Joe Rogan question. We're getting there. So, here's where they start talking about money. Okay. Well, college question. 2 more college questions. One about debt. But this one is, if you attended college, how has your education impacted each of the following aspects of your life? And then they get to select for each of these. Did it make it easier, make it harder, or neither? And they said, how's your education? So 49% of them say that it helped them. It made it easier to navigate real world issues, which I find kind of funny. I don't know what do you guys think about that in the chat? Just going to college these days make it easier to navigate real world issues? I don't know. Becoming a better person. What a interesting question to ask, like a very leading question, because this goes back to, I heard Jonathan Haidt do a lecture once where he was talking about the 2 different ways of viewing college, and he was sort of saying, the John Stuart Mill approach is that is the purpose of college is to teach young people how to think, but not what to think. It's to educate. It's to teach them how to think. And he said the other way, there's the John Stuart Mill approach, the other approach is the Marx approach. And he sort of said, that's where you teach young people what to think. And the purpose of college there is not to educate, it's to create activists. It's like moral instruction. That's why I call woke a religion. A lot of people call it a religion because it is. It stands as religion for a lot of people. It's where they get their sense of being a good person. And there's a lot of parts of it that function a lot. Like they have ritual, they have liturgy, they have the concept of original sin, but they call it privilege. And so they view it as, we're here to teach you to be a good person at college, to have the right opinions, the correct moral opinions, and to send you out in the world as this moral activist, like an evangelical, like a missionary. They're making little woke missionaries. And so it's so funny because they ask, "How did your education make you a better person?" And 46% said yes. Did it help you get a job you enjoy? 44% said yes. 45% said 45 said no, and 10% said it made it harder. Did it help you get a job that pays well? 42% said yes, 10% said it made it harder, and 48% said neither. How has education, did it helped you when it comes to being treated with respect? 39% said it made it easier. And allowing for long-term financial success, only 35% say it made it easier. 22% said it made it harder for long-term financial success. It's probably because they took out a lot of debt. Next question, debt. How much student loan debt do you currently have? 41% of them, this is encouraging, never had any student loan debt. That was a bigger number than I expected, much bigger. 41% of them didn't take out debt. Next highest percentage here is 14% have paid off their student loan debt in full already. 13% still owe between $10,000 and $25,000. 11% owe between $25,000 and $50,000. 8% owe over $50,000. It's also tied with 8% who owe between $5,000 and $10,000, and 5% owe under $5,000. So that's kind of spread pretty evenly between those different categories, those different levels of debt. But then you get into their attitudes about money and their anxiety. And this part is pretty revealing. So again, if you're just tuning in, we're reading through this survey of 1,033 young people, of young registered voters between the age of 18 and 34. This is the survey from which all of those hundreds of mainstream news articles drew their headlines, where they said the majority of women think that listening to Joe Rogan is a red flag. So there's a lot of stuff in this survey. That's why we're looking through it. If you have debt, so they only asked this one of the people who still have the young people who still have the debt. How concerned are you about being able to afford the following while making your student loan payments? And so they have it ranging from very concerned to not at all concerned, or NA, not applicable. 64% of them, that's the highest answer on here, are very concerned about an unexpected $1,000 cost. They need to listen to some Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey helped me get turned around. In fact, one of the first things he makes you do is save up $1,000 for an emergency. It's funny because that's exactly this cost right here, which they're saying they're very, very, very concerned because they wouldn't be able to pay that. Also concerning here, 44% of them are very concerned about being able to pay off their other debt, their other loans and debt, like credit card debt. So they have other debt. 42% are worried, very concerned about being able to make their rent or mortgage payments each month. 36% are very concerned about groceries. 33% are very concerned about car payments. 33%, an equal number, are very concerned about therapy. Oh, you know, all these young people are in therapy. 32% worried about utility bills. 30% are very concerned about being able to afford entertainment, such as eating out. 30% are very concerned about being able to afford their prescription medications. And look at this. This is so sad. 29%. Look, I've been there. I made some bad decisions with money when I was younger. I also had a lot of college debt. I also had credit card debt because I didn't know. I was kind of naive. Again, find Dave Ramsey if you didn't learn that stuff at your place of higher education. 29% of them are very concerned about an unexpected $100 charge or cost. Yeah. Pretty sad. Depressing. 19% of them are very concerned about being able to afford new clothing, and 14% are very concerned about being able to afford their gym membership. So if you could go back in time, would you? 45%, the highest number, say they wouldn't change their path in education at all. 24% say they would pursue a different degree. than what they currently have. Now, see, here's where I would like to see a follow-up question. What degree do you currently have? I want to see, of that 24%, how many of them have a gender studies degree, or, critical race theory or queer theory or something like that. I want to know. 18% say they would pursue a higher degree than they currently have. And 13% said if they could do it over again, they would not go to college. Taking just a second to check the chat. Dave Ramsey says cheeky mare. Yeah. Someone, Therese says, is the orange man in the room with us now? What is that about? Trump? Is there somebody in here talking about Trump? Okay. Which of the following statements best describes your view of the American dream? Half of them, 50%, said the American dream was once achievable, but no longer is. That's young people, man. Black-pilled. 28% says they say the American dream has never been achievable. And 23% say the American dream continues to be achievable. Excuse me. How would you rate the following? And then they have these things they're supposed to rate: your personal finances, the local economy, the economy in your state, and the national economy. The national economy, only 1% say it's excellent. It's excellent. 1%. Who's that person? 66% of them say the national economy is very poor. Is poor. Personal finances, only 5% of them say excellent. If you look at the total excellent and good, where you add excellent and good and you add poor fair, so good versus bad, here's the summary, basically, these two columns. So 8% of them think the economy's good, 87% think it's bad. 23% of them say their personal finances are good, and 75% of them say their personal finances are bad. Same thing with the economy in your state. 77% say the economy in their state is bad. Local economy, 72% say bad. The U.S. is currently facing several significant economic challenges. How would you rank your concerns? With 1 meaning it's your top concern and 8 meaning it's your lowest ranked. And if you can go through top concern, cost of living, 28% of them say cost of living is their most important concern. Inflation, second most important concern. 23% of them say inflation. So these are all economic things. And remember, roughly half of the people taking this are lefties, lefty young people. They voted for Biden. And their top concerns, it's not racism, it's not climate change, it's not abortion, it's none of the lefty social justice things that the left is pushing. Even with all of that political manipulation and propaganda and, pushing on people and influencing people, misinforming people, scaring people, all of that, it's still they have to live in reality. This is why sometimes I think it's going to take a really bad economic collapse for people to wake up, because it takes you butting up against reality and reality winning and shaking you awake for you to let go of all this crap, this whole evil, ridiculous ideology of woke, of social justice, this whole everything that's currently working to destroy our society. It's like, if you are having to figure out how to survive, all that falls by the wayside. Nobody has time to care about your frickin' pronouns if they're trying to make enough money to eat each day. All that goes by the wayside. Nobody's talking about, like, I want to be a pregnant man, if they're trying to figure out how to eat every day. Nobody's talking about racism equals prejudice plus power, if they're trying to figure out how to eat every day. They're not out there saying, "It's impossible to be racist towards white people," if they're trying to figure out how to eat every day. So I kind of think it's the economic things that break through those pressures, those fears, and you can see that here with this survey of 1,033 young people, of roughly half of which are lefties who voted for Biden. Number one most important issue here for them, cost of living. Sorry, cost of living. It's cost of living. Number 2, inflation. Number 3, climate change. There it is. Comes through at number 3. They got these young people scared about that so they can try and get more government control. Number 4, political instability. Number 5, unaffordable housing. There's another economic one on the list. Number 6, low wages, another economic one. Number 7, student debt, another economic one. Number 8, lack of good jobs, another economic one. Thinking of your own household budget, would you say you are spending too much or too little on each of the following? And so it's ordered more than I should, or as much as I should, or not spending enough on it, right? So 52% of these young people say they're spending more than they should on housing. 44% say they're spending more than they should on restaurants. Then if you look over here on the things they don't think they're spending enough money on, the things they wish they had more money for, they're saying, highest one here, 49% of them, half of them say they're not spending enough on vacations and travel. 40% say they're not spending enough on concerts and live events. So it's like the leisure activities, the ability to rest and take leisure. Funny enough, my pastor preached about this yesterday. How humans are we are meant to have the leisure to contemplate and to think about things and to not be busy so that we can be creative. The creative process requires that. And he was like, God commands every 7 days you take a day of rest, a day of leisure to contemplate God, to contemplate nature, to contemplate. That's where creativity is born. And so half of these young people are saying, I'm not spending enough on leisure. How favorable. Oh gosh, here we get into it. Here's we get into it. How favorable are your feelings about each of the following? Oh, by the way, let me just look in the chat because you guys have some good comments. Robert Lowry says, I have anxiety. I'm never sure if I have enough. Again, Robert, can't you tell who put the Teen Vogue or whoever, some lefty put this poll together? Because none of the options are like, I'm spending too much or too little on ammo, right? Like it would be written differently if it were written by someone who was based. I'm spending too much or too little on my chicken coop this year, like all the stuff that the base people are prepping and getting ready to live off the grid, or like, none of that's on here. They're like, okay. Here we get into some of that. Now this gets more into the meat of who these people are, which again was my first question when I saw those headlines about Rogan. Is like, well, who did you survey? So look at this. How favorable, young people, how favorable are your feelings about each of the following? Again, this is a survey of 1,033 young people ages 18 to 34 who are registered to vote, and half of whom voted for Biden. So how favorable are your feelings about each of the following? Capitalism. And they have a couple of different, because they did this poll 3 times, they've got 3 answers here for capitalism and socialism. Just look at the top one. That's the most recent one that we've been looking through. So, in the most recent poll, only 16% of them, are very favorable of capitalism, 14% somewhat favorable of capitalism. Then if you go over here to very unfavorable of capital, 36%, that's the highest percentage here. 36% of them are very unfavorable of capitalism. They're very unfavorable of it, yet they want to be able to afford to go on vacations and, like, it's like, I question what they learned in school. We know what they learned and didn't learn. Now socialism, let's compare socialism. Wow, a much higher percentage here is very favorable of socialism. 23% of these young people are favorable of socialism. 21% well, 23% are very favorable of socialism, and 21% are somewhat favorable of socialism. That's combined, that's 44%. 44%, almost half of the young people, almost exactly the same percentage that voted for Biden. Of the people who took this poll, the young people who took this survey, 45% of them voted for Biden and 44% of them are favorable of socialism. Think it's the same percentage? I do. Idiots. Absolute idiots. You've learned nothing. That expensive education you're paying back, it's not even worth the paper it's on. Then you've got 30% are very unfavorable of socialism. What do you wanna bet that's the, 25% who voted for Trump and, Joe Jorgensen combined? I think it was like 8% for Joe Jorgensen, something like that, so a little over 30% total of wrong thinkers, very unfavorable of socialism. Let's scroll on down to communism. 8%, very favorable. 12% somewhat favorable. 46% very unfavorable, at least that's higher. This tells me something about words and language and, the way that some words are made, toxic or polluted, maybe. So, for example, in our society, they've polluted words like, they polluted words like nationalism. That's almost like a dirty word now to say someone's a nationalist. They've polluted that word. They make you link it to race. What do you hear? What's the first thing if you're an American and you hear nationalist? What's the first thing that comes to mind? White nationalists. They've they've linked that word psychologically. They've polluted it, and you can do that with different words. Like they've done that with they did that with alt right at the beginning. Alt right just meant it did not mean um it did not mean white nationalists and all that stuff. It was people who were not a part of the regular old conservative system. They weren't rhinos. They were young people. It was a lot of gay people like Milo, and over time that word came to be very specific, much more specific. It became polluted and it came to mean, and now everyone agrees, okay, we're going to have that phrase alt-right mean these crazy people on the right. But anyway, I bring all that up because look at these two words. Those of us who try to talk about the dangers of communism and socialism, I guess we've done a better job talking about the dangers of communism because it's more polluted for these young people. They're like, there's more of them who are very unfavorable. And somehow we're not doing as great of a job with socialism, with explaining what's so nasty about it. Think of the phrase woke itself. Woke was something that white leftists, social justice as well. We were the ones when I was in social justice, we were the ones that were using that phrase. SJW, we were using it. We were proud of it. I'm a social justice warrior kind of thing. And white woke people, white social justice people took that phrase woke from the black community and it became another way of talking about social justice. And then it didn't become like viewed as a negative thing until those of us who are critical of it became very successful at polluting it, like very successful at explaining what's wrong with it. And so now when you hear woke, people are like, "Oh, that's a pejorative." Yeah, because we did a good job of talking about how awful it is. We need to do a better job of doing the same with socialism for young people. Um, okay, look at this. This is really funny to me. How favorable are you of corporations? They put only 1% of them are very favorable and 7% are somewhat favorable. But I would love to have a follow-up question and say, is your favorite podcast, are you one of the people who answered in the podcast question that your favorite podcast is the New York Times podcast? Because you seem to like big corporations, big media. You think you don't. You think you don't, but you do. Did you get a Pfizer tattoo? Like, I down with corporations except for all the ones that agree with me and that I'm putting rainbow flags all over everything and getting their tattoo and talking up their vaccines. Yeah. Anyway, small businesses. 64% of them are very favorable. Really? Where were all you young people then when small businesses, a lot of them were put under during the COVID years in favor of the corporations? Where were you? Did you support lockdowns or did you get out in the street and protest? Did you select it as one of the issues you cared about enough about to say something about when small businesses were being told they couldn't operate? And some people, grandmas even, were going to jail for trying to open their coffee shop. Did you stand up for small businesses then, or did you call those people grandma killers? I don't see it reflected in what you did the past few years, young people. Although maybe the past few years have influenced your view. That's a positive take on this, that now you're more supportive of small businesses. How favorable of you are you of Jeff Bezos? 1% said very favorable. 3% said somewhat favorable. 53% very unfavorable of Jeff Bezos, and 23% somewhat unfavorable. That's great. Elon Musk, more of them like Elon Musk. I guess there's some of the hardcore wrong thinkers here. 7% of them are very favorable of Elon Musk, 13% somewhat favorable, 52% very unfavorable. Mark Zuckerberg, his numbers come in lower than Jeff Bezos. Only 1% are very favorable of Mark Zuckerberg, 2% somewhat favorable, 51% very unfavorable. How favorable are you of cryptocurrency? Only 2% very favorable, 5% somewhat, 47% very unfavorable of cryptocurrency. That's strange, isn't it? Does anybody else think that's strange? I thought that would be flipped the other way. How confident are you in being able to achieve each of the following economic milestones? And they have stuff on here like receive the level of education you want. But look at some of the ones for like down the road. How confident are you that you're going to be able to buy a reliable car? A combined total of 42% are not confident they're going to be able to buy a reliable car. A combined total of 42% are not confident they're going to be able to live in a neighborhood they feel safe in. A combined total of 47%, for almost half of them are not confident they're going to be able to buy whatever they want at the grocery store. 46% of them not confident they're going to be able to have kids. 63% of them not confident they're going to be able to own a home. Over half of them not confident they're going to be able to go on vacation once a year. Over half of them not confident they're going to be able to go and pay off other types of debt, medical, credit card, etc. Over half of them not confident that they're not going to live paycheck to paycheck. have as many kids as you want. Look at that. 57% of them say they're not confident they're gonna be able to have as many kids as they want. 66% of them not confident they're gonna be able to retire. Over half of them not confident they're gonna be able to start a business. They don't have, the majority basically in every one of these categories, they are not confident they're going to be able to afford all of the things that, you know, used to be goals for when you become an adult. Buying your own home, having a car, having your own private transportation, a method of getting around, not living paycheck to paycheck, being able to afford to have kids. Pretty bleak, young people. I think it's the economic stuff that's gonna wake some of these young people up. I do. I think we're gonna see more of them leaving the left as it starts to encroach on their real lives more and more, as some of these fears come true. Here's so they move into some questions about AI, which I'm also very interested in. So I'll read you these. Which of the following comes closest to a view about artificial intelligence products such as ChatGPT that can have conversations with you and write entire essays based on a few prompts from humans? So 60% of them say AI will take away jobs in the long run and do more harm than good. I would agree with you guys, young people. 60% of you. This one is another one they throw in about money. What percentage of your monthly income do you use for housing, like for rent and housing? And 23% of them say less than 20%, but the next highest, 20% of them say they spend between 30% and 39% of their paycheck on rent. I think I read somewhere that it suggested that you don't pay more than a third of your paycheck on housing costs. And so then you've got all these other categories. 14% pay between 40 and 50% of their paycheck on rent. 14% pay between 50 and 60% of their paycheck on rent or housing. 8% pay over 60% of their paycheck on housing. Other than pay, what are the most important factors when looking for a job? Select up to 3. And they have, the number 1 answer here is work-life balance, number 2, benefits, number 3, hours, etcetera. Here we scroll down, you see some of the woke stuff. Doing interesting or impactful work, 49%, so roughly half of them say yes. Opportunities for career advancement, workplace culture, the commute, ability to work remotely, coming in at 19%. Racial and ethnic diversity of the workplace. Doesn't rank very high in the real world, does it? Which of the following best describes how you and others, including friends and family, identify politically? So here we get them telling us how they identify. We've been making these assumptions based on how they voted, but and what podcast they listen to and other things. But here we go. So they say of the people taking the survey, 38% of them call themselves progressive and 18% call themselves liberal. I would just lump those all together and say probably woke. Because if you're still calling yourself that these days, for the most part, you're not a real liberal. You're probably a leftist. That's just my opinion. I would say leftist. 12% of the people who are taking the survey say they're a moderate. 7% say they're libertarian. 13% say conservative. So only 20%. No, here we go. There's 6% say they're MAGA. So 26% of the people taking this are definite, like, wrong thinkers, whether they call themselves libertarian, conservative, MAGA. And then there's 12% are moderates. Those are like the gimme. I don't know which way they're going. But you've got like 26% here and that lines up with what we saw before, also with some of the percentages. And then they ask about your friends and everyone. And this was kind of interesting because I expected a higher number here under the progressive to say their significant other was also I expected it to be equal, like, I'm progressive and so is my significant other. But maybe I don't know how they asked this question. Maybe some of the people responding didn't have a oh, no, there's NA, not applicable. Yeah. So, some of them don't have a significant other. That's why you see a high number of them saying NA, 44%. So it probably is, like, anyone in this 38% who's taking this, who's a progressive, describes himself as progressive, would probably only date a progressive person. I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, we tend to gravitate towards people who have our shared worldview, and in fact, I think you might be setting yourself up for disaster if your spouse doesn't have the same worldview as you. Like, you can disagree on any number of things, but, the big things, like the way in which you view the world, not necessarily policy decisions, like, you could agree with this politician's policy position and your spouse could disagree, etcetera, fine, but the way in which you view the world, whether that's religious or political, what have you, if you don't have the same worldview, you're gonna have big problems probably, so I'm not saying that's a bad thing that they're only dating other progressives. So, how favorable are your feelings? This is another interesting one. They list some people, and they're not all politicians. Mm. How favorable are your feelings on each of these public figures, groups, and ideas? We're just going to look at the top answer because, again, they did this survey 3 times. So, of the people who took this survey, 47% of them are favorable of Barack Obama. Only 23% of them are favorable of Donald Trump. That tells you about who took this survey. 25% of them are favorable of Kamala Harris. Wow, that's pretty low. That's pretty low for this survey, isn't it? Because this survey has, like, been pretty consistent at, like, half, like 45%, 45, 47% around there voted for Biden. They're pretty lefty. They're favorable of socialism. Like, they're pretty but they don't only half of those like Kamala Harris. She has a much higher total unfavorable rating. Look, 52% unfavorable rating, 25% favorable rating. Isn't that funny? The people who don't like her really don't like her. That's something else to look at. Look, 16% somewhat unfavorable, 36% very unfavorable. Same goes for Trump. Look at his. Wow. Of the people who don't like Trump, like, they really don't like him. Like, there's not a lot of middle ground. Somewhat unfavorable Trump, only 6%. Very unfavorable Trump, 67% that we really don't like him. That's funny. Okay, Ron DeSantis, here we go. How favorable are you? 8% of the people who took this survey are favorable. No. Added up with somewhat and very, 18%. So 18% who took this are favorable of DeSantis. 66% of them are unfavorable of DeSantis. How about the Democratic Party in general? Isn't this interesting? Now, these are people who voted for, again, 45% of these people voted for Biden. But are they favorable of the Democratic Party? No. Only 29% of them are favorable of the Democratic Party. Of the total number of people who took this, only 29% are favorable of the Democratic Party. 51% are unfavorable of the Democratic Party. How about Joe Biden? Now, again, 45% of these people voted for Joe Biden, but only 24% of them are favorable of him. Did they change their opinion? Do they want him to be more lefty, more woke? I do know some people on the left like that. 56% of the people who took this survey are unfavorable of Joe Biden. I just want to scroll up and compare that to Trump. Wow. In terms of favorability, it's pretty much the same. Joe Biden's 24% and Trump is 23%. But the unfavorability is very different. Look, 73% unfavorable of Trump, 56% unfavorable of Biden. The Republican Party, 18% favorable, 74% unfavorable. Then you have some interesting people thrown in here like Cornel West, 13% favorable, 10% unfavorable, and a whopping 67% never heard of him. Again, young people, what are you learning at these expensive colleges you're going to where you have lots of debt? You don't know who Cornel West is? Do you approve or disapprove of the job being done by each of the following public officials? And then they also have, do you approve or disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing as president? Oh, that was the question they asked in 2023. And if you look over here, you can see total disapprove is at 53% and total approve is at 41%. If the election for US Congress were held today, who would you vote for? And you can see the split. Let's just look at the August 2023 column. That's the most recent survey. And you can see the split. It's the same split we've been talking about. 55% of the young people who took this survey would vote for the Democrats, and only 25% would vote for the Republicans. Again, this is a survey of like half Democrats and only around 25% conservatives. And the rest, not sure. If the 2024 election for president were held today and the candidates are Joe Biden, Donald Trump, who would get your vote? Are you kidding me, young people? 58% of them today, knowing everything they know, would vote for Biden. 30% of them vote for Trump. Young people, wake up and smell the coffee with real milk. If the 2024 election for president were held today and the candidates are Joe Biden or Ron DeSantis, who would get your vote? It's the same. 58% Joe Biden, same split. 29% Ron DeSantis. It's only 1% different than Trump. It doesn't matter to them. They're just going to vote Democrat. Even with everything they've seen, the manipulation, the propaganda, the programming is so strong, they're just going to vote Democrat. They can't imagine themselves. They can't imagine. I know, because I used to be one of these people. They can't imagine themselves ever voting Republican. It's so taboo. It's way up there with, like, in terms of moral taboos in their psychology, it's up there with murdering someone or, pedophilia or something. They can't imagine voting for a Republican. That's what we have to break through. That's what we have to get through to change people. I'm not saying this as a Republican. I didn't leave the left to become a Republican. I'm not a part of any party. I'm just saying this as someone who wants to help people get out of that place where they're locked into it. I can't vote for anything other than Democrat, or I would be voting for someone bad, right? Like they're just so locked into it. And you that's that whatever that psychological thing is, like, that's what you have to figure out. That taboo thing, you have to get them past that, where they get past all the propaganda. And they look at the real world effects of their vote. They look at the economy, all the things they're talking about in this survey. They're not going to be able to afford things, the economy, so maybe do something a little differently. Now, this is interesting. They throw in a Green Party candidate. Again, this survey is done by a leftist. I think it's Teen Vogue, because their name shows up on the back end, but it's done by some leftist outlet. And so they want to see, I know they put this in here because they want to see what would happen if a third party candidate's running on the left. They want to be able to do what they do they used to do this when I was voting on the left constantly, is they would try and guilt you and make you feel bad. Like they had all attacked Susan Sarandon for voting Green Party. Like they will jump on you and say, you're giving the election to the Republican, you might as well vote Republican. They really don't like Green Party running. They don't like any third party options on the left. They view it as splitting the vote. And so it's a leftist running the survey because they didn't put in here a libertarian option to see what would happen if you're splitting the vote on the right or whatever. But they said, okay, if the election were today and the candidates are Joe Biden as Democrat, Donald Trump as Republican ticket, and Cornel West as the Green Party ticket, what happens? And that's interesting because it brings down Joe Biden's percentage. It brings him down to 39%, Donald Trump at 27%, and Cornel West, who they just said they don't even know who he is. They just said 67% of them have no idea who he is, but they said 18% of them would vote for him. Now, here's another cultural question. Wait, let me take 1 second and look at the chat. Sorry, I haven't been looking too closely at the chat because I'm so fascinated by this survey. I hope that's okay, guys. If you have something you need me to see, make sure Pirate sees it. Or Cheeky. Or Robert if he's here. Hey, Z Highness. Okay. Here we get into some of the social cultural questions. Like earlier, we were looking at what they thought about affirmative action. So now they ask about abortion. Do you think abortion should be, we're just going to look at the most recent one they did in August, legal in all cases, 52%. All cases? All cases? Does that mean I wonder, how would you guys interpret that question? Because does that mean up until the moment of birth? Does that mean... Anyway, 52% of them say legal in all cases. 23% say legal in most cases. And then you have a pretty small percentage, 25%. I guess it's not that small. We knew only around 25% of these people were conservative. 25% of them say illegal. And that's split between illegal in most cases, 70%, and illegal in all cases, 8%. Only 8% say illegal in all cases. Which statement do you agree with more? And most of them, 55%, say, I will not vote for a candidate who has a view of abortion different than me. So abortion is their one of their number one things, really? Okay. As far as you know, has your state made abortion illegal or severely restricted? And it's sort of split here, half and half. Mostly illegal, mostly legal. If your state bans abortion or has recently passed laws to ban abortion in your state, does that make you much more motivated to move to another state? 29%. Somewhat more motivated to move to another state? 24%. 34% says makes no difference. 4% says somewhat more motivated to stay in the state, and 10% says much more motivated to stay in my state. I'm very interested in this here, which is more than half of them say that if their state bans abortion, they're somewhat or very motivated to move. And so regardless of your opinions on abortion, whether you are pro-choice or not, if you are based and you're in a state like Texas that's being overrun with woke missionaries moving here and changing the culture, maybe it would be a good idea for you to support banning abortion outright, whether you agree with it or not, just to get them to leave. That's all I'm saying. I'm sort of a funny Swiftian proposal, sort of satiric, sort of being sarcastic, but not really. I'm actually kind of like, if it gets them to leave, okay. I'm at that point where I'm like, I'm willing to vote for things I don't even agree with if it gets them to leave. Like, Is that weird? I need to think about that more. A modest proposal, says Davina. Which group do you think is more likely to experience each of the following issues? Please select the group that you think faces a greater challenge in each case. Okay, this is another social question, kind of interesting. So they have it divided between men and women. Now, shocker, shocker. We know that a leftist made this poll, and the very first question they had was like, "Are you male, female, transgender, non-binary, other?" Like they had this whole range of things. But then when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, they can't play around. They know those categories are all made up, and they can't play. They really want to know the difference between men and women. Like they're getting down to so they don't even put those options in here. Isn't that funny? You get down to the nitty-gritty and they're like, "Which of these groups is more likely to experience this?" And then they have it divided between men and women, and that's it. And but or both equally here. We had or neither. But it's men and women. Difficulty sharing feelings and emotions. 76% of them say men have that worse. That affects them. Suicide, 55% correctly said that that affects men more. 39% said it affects them equally. Young people, you need to study some statistics and you need to look up some of the things that affect men. And suicide is one of those things. Mental health stigma, 52% of them said men, more likely to affect men. Homophobia, 42% said more likely to affect men, or they're likely to experience it. Um, Mental health challenges, 23% said men. Okay, look at this. Here's where we start to swing into pressure to conform to gender norms. They 61% say it affects both equally. Relationship norms, 61% says both equally. Emotional impact of economic instability and unemployment. This is all, most of them say it affects men and women equally. But if you look at this, more likely to experience sexism. 61% say women are more likely to experience sexism. I am a woman, and I'm here to tell you that maybe 10, 20 short years ago, I would have agreed with you. But currently in the US, I think men are much more likely to butt up against sexism. I do. I'm more likely to maybe interact with an individual guy who's sexist in some way, maybe. But for the most part, our systemic oppression, right? Systemic bias, systemic prejudice. Our system is more sexist towards men, not women. Young people. I know that's not what the school is teaching you and programming you with. Google, you can look this up, young people. Google, this is a few years ago. They were like, "Oh, we're probably paying our women engineers a lot less than men because of sexism. Let's do an internal review so we can pay our women the same." They did that internal review and they found out they were paying their men less than their women, and they had to correct it. Affirmative action, which we talked about before. That's systemic sexism against men. It is. If a school or university or a job or an employer, if anybody gives me an advantage because I'm a woman, which happens a lot nowadays, that's systemic sexism. That is sexism. That's discrimination against men. They don't get that little check mark, that little bonus because they're a man. The family courts are heavily biased towards women. The judicial system, some of the criminal system, if a cop gets called to a house and there's been a domestic dispute, they're more often than not going to believe that the man was the aggressor. Even though if you read studies, statistically, in domestic disputes, women are more likely to hit the man than the man is to hit the woman? That was a surprising stat the first time I heard it, but it's true. And if you think about it, it makes sense. But men are more likely to actually do damage and very devastating damage when they hit women. That's true also. Anyway, this one here just really bothered me because it's like, come on, young people. Sexism, really? 61% of you think it affects women more than men? I don't agree. I used to, but things have changed. We decided as a society with woke and social justice, we decided the way to fix sexism against women was to become sexist against men. That's what we decided. That's what we did. We went way over there in the other extreme. We have phrases like toxic masculinity. We don't have phrases like that about women. We try and demonize masculinity. We are sexist against our culture is sexist against men. The APA, the American Psychological Association, I think it's called. They basically govern psychologists and therapists and psychiatrists. They put out these guidelines a few years ago where it's like how to talk to your male clients who are coming to you for therapy, and it's all about like how to talk to them about their male privilege and their toxic masculinity. It's so sexist towards them because they're men. We have phrases like male privilege. We say stuff like that to people. Social justice people say stuff like that to men to their face. They will tell them to check their male privilege, to shut up, to sit down, that they don't get to speak because they're a man. They don't get to have an opinion. Somebody said this to me. This happens all the time. When I do interact with people who are still on the left, they will say to me, "Well, I don't believe men." Woke men will say this to me. Woke men will say, "Well, I don't believe I get to have an opinion on abortion. I don't believe I get to have it because I'm a man. I don't believe men get to have an opinion on it." It's in You wanna talk about internalized sexism. That's internalized sexism, where they're, like, whipping themselves like, "I have a brain that I'm not going to use, and I'm not gonna form any opinions because I'm a man. On this subject, I don't get to have thoughts." What? You can and should have thoughts. You're robbing yourself, and you're robbing anybody who's around you, and gosh, if you're married to a woman, oh, I can't imagine being married to a guy who's like, "Well, I don't think I get to have an opinion on this subject because I'm a man." Ew. Gross. So unattractive. So unattractive. Please don't be a cuck. Ugh. Okay. I'm sorry, it's a bit of a tangent, but yeah. I can't stand that kind of fake male feminist, and I know some of them, they're not trying to be duplicitous, they've really it's sad. They really have because they're in that leftist cult, that world that teaches them that being a man is that masculinity is toxic and that being a man gives them privilege and that they're so much more privileged than women and, they're in the oppressor class, and, they've really adopted some of them. It's sad, they've adopted this sort of, bowing and scraping mentality with women where they don't have any confidence, and, some of them are doing it as a mating, strategy, of course. They're trying to bed women by pretending to be male feminists or whatever, but some of them really have subjugated themselves in their own mind. Like, they really have become these little just like a carpet that you walk over. It's so unattractive. Men. What do men say? "Nut up." I know that's a dirty phrase kind of, but, you know, put on your big boy pants. You get to have opinions on things. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but no, you're wrong, young people. You're wrong. What they're teaching you in school is the way it used to be. If you're learning that sexism mostly affects women in the US anyway, I'm not talking about the rest of the world, but in the US, that it mostly impacts women, that's not the world that we live in anymore. It mostly impacts men. Okay. lack of leadership opportunities, hiring, and promotions in the workplace. And they, again, I think incorrectly put women at 63%, say it affects women more than men. Difficulty balancing parenting and work responsibilities. 52% say it mostly impacts women. I think that's still true. And I think it might even be higher. I think for the most part, what's happened since women have entered the workforce is now there's this split where, yes, men are also doing a lot more of the domestic stuff as well, but for the most part, a lot of that still falls on the women. That I haven't seen change as much, and so you do have these women who are just doing double duty, working and then coming home and trying to take care of the house and kids and everything, and it's just too much. I think it works better if one person stays home and is in charge of the kids and the cooking and be that the man or woman. I think women on average prefer to do it and are better suited for it on average. That doesn't mean every woman, but I think it works better when one person's at home. And right now, as a consequence of women entering the workforce, not that we shouldn't be able to, but what happened is we doubled the workforce, and so salaries all declined, wages declined, and so now the standard of living is such that you almost need to, now you almost don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to be really creative and figure it out for one of you to be able to stay home. Unequal access to medical services and treatments. 48% of these young people say that that affects women more than men. Really? Unequal access to medical services and treatments? What are you talking about? I don't even know what they're thinking of. Are they thinking of abortion or something? What are they talking about? Online abuse and stalking, 76% said that affects women more than men. Yeah, I would agree. Experience career setbacks due to parenting, 74% say that affects women more than men. Yeah. Pressure to conform to beauty standards, 71% say it affects women more than men. Probably. And then here we go. This is the question that launched hundreds of mainstream media headlines. This is the question. This is where all those headlines came from about majority of women say it's a red flag if a man listens to Joe Rogan. Here's what it came from. Do you consider each of the following behaviors or traits to be a green flag, a beige flag, or a red flag in a partner? Green flag, of course, meaning like that's a good thing that they do that. Red meaning it's a very bad thing, and beige is like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. So, this is so funny. Let's go through these because they're all really funny. Again, this is a survey of 1,033 young people who are registered to vote, people between the ages of 18 and 34, 45% of whom, so almost half of whom voted for Biden. They say that if a partner reads, that's a green flag, 92%. That's a green flag. Researching for best deals and rates before buying, 85%. Let's say that's a green flag. If they look better in person, that's a green flag, 54%. If they say Black Lives Matter, that's a green flag. 53% of them. If they say Black Lives Matter, 53%, so that's a green flag. I want to check. I'm going to swipe left or right. Which direction is it? I don't even know. If you want to take the person on a date, is it right or left? Anyway, Black Lives Matter, I'm swiping the right way. If they take candid pictures of you, that's a green flag. 42%. That is the green flag. That is pretty nice if they they want to get photos of you laughing and stuff. I like that. They're attentive to you. They're into you. 48% say, I don't know what flag, it's beige flag. What is that? Okay. If they identify as liberal, they say 35% say that's a green flag. Really? Only 35%? More of them are into the person saying Black Lives Matter. Only 35%. I wonder if that's because liberal's not good enough for them. Remember, the majority of these people are call themselves progressive, not liberal. So maybe they view it as like liberal's not good enough. 40% of them say, man, whatever. 25% say that's a red flag. This is the conservatives over here. Here's the 25% of the people who took this are conservative. We know that, or conservative leaning, and they say that's a red flag. If they are not on social media, 61% say whatever. 6% say red flag, 33% say green flag. Okay, if they say there are only 2 genders, 51% say that's a red flag. These leftist young people say that's a red flag if they say there's only 2 genders. There are only 2 genders. What did you guys learn in these expensive colleges? This is how deep. I know I'm laughing at it, but it's pretty freaking amazing. I mean, I have to laugh at it because it's mad. It's absurd that we live in the year 2023 and 51% of these young people in this survey say it's a red flag if their partner says there's only 2 That's like it what if your partner says that gravity is real? Red flag. Like what? There's only 2 genders. Red flag. The sky is blue. That's a red flag. Oh gosh, young people. I have to laugh, but I feel like scared for you guys because this is a crazy amount of social conditioning. Like I don't know. We are living through something insane. We are living through something insane that you could brainwash that many people, many of whom went to college, most of whom went to college in this survey. Okay, this is funny. Of these leftists, more of them think it's a red flag that a partner says there's only 2 genders than if they own a gun. I mean, it's encouraging for Second Amendment rights. 48% of them say, meh, beige flag if they own a gun. Wow. 31%, a higher percentage, say it's a green flag if they own a gun. That's interesting, right? That one surprises me. Okay, this is the milk one we talked about earlier. If they prefer cow milk over any non-dairy milk. 66% say whatever. 28% say that's a green flag. Yes, it is. In my opinion. Real milk. Real milk. 5% say that's a red flag. If they who these 5%, whoever these 5% are, never date these people. That's a red flag that they like cow milk. Okay. They have too many hobbies, whatever. Okay, here's one. They say all lives matter. If a partner or someone you're dating says all lives matter, 54% of them say that's a red flag. If they say all lives don't matter, 24% say it's a green flag. 22% don't care. Look at this. If the person you're dating identifies as conservative, 50% say that's a red flag. Half of them. Red flag if they say they're conservative. Look at this one. They send green texts. Okay. Old people. Do you know what this means? I'm just kidding. We're not old. We're older. We're older. This means they are judging people for not having iPhones, for not being on Wi-Fi. Isn't that what that means? Because it comes through as blue when you're on Wi-Fi and you're using iPhone. And if I'm texting an Android, if I'm texting a different device, their texts come in as green because they're not on iPhone. They're judging people who don't have iPhones. Isn't that the case? Pirate Tomsky, we're not old, we're experienced. Blarful question mark. Yes, Vermont chat, it means you're on Android. Yes, they are judging people who don't have iPhones. That's what this question is. So if the person you're dating sends green texts, meaning they're not on iPhone. 23% of them say it's a green flag. They like that. You're not on iPhone. 71% are like, what? Who cares? Beige flag. And 6% say red flag. Red flag, they're not on iPhone. Oh, that's weird that 23% are like, cool, we don't like Apple. They talk about politics frequently. 23% say that's a good thing. 23% say green flag. 18% say red flag. 58% are like, whatever. They identify as a communist. 16% say green flag. 16% of these people are morons. They identify as a communist, green flag. What? 54% say red flag. Yeah. 30% are like, I don't know. These guys are also idiots. I'm sorry. They identify as a communist, and you're like, nah. Do they send green texts? They're into astrology. 57% say meh. 15% say green flag. 28% say red flag. Astrologists. Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. This is the thing that launched all the headlines. If they listen to Joe Rogan, if the person you're dating listens to Joe Rogan, 50% say red flag. Remember, this is a survey of 1,033 young people ages 18 to 34 who are registered to vote, 45% of whom voted for Biden. More accurate headline would have been young people who voted for Biden say it's a red flag if your partner listens to Joe Rogan. That would have been a more accurate headline. Or from the previous question we saw, they could have also taken this very same survey and they could have said, we surveyed young people and the number one most popular podcast among them is the Joe Rogan podcast. They could have said that, but they didn't. 14% say if your partner listens to Joe Rogan, it's a green flag, and 36% are like, what? I don't care. They identify as a MAGA Republican. 71% say that's a red flag. 71%. 12% say green flag. Those are the MAGA Republicans who took this survey. It's a green flag. 17% say it doesn't matter. They don't care about politics. 42% say red flag. Really? I don't know. I think it might be a positive thing if they don't care about politics. It could be. It doesn't mean that. I mean, I think it's important that your partner cares about the world and culture and ideology and philosophy and the things that are happening. But I don't know. Politics. 12% say it's a green flag if they don't care about politics. 46% say it doesn't matter. Look at this one. If they refuse to see the Barbie movie, 44% say red flag if you won't see the Barbie movie. That could have been the headline. Majority of women 12% say it's a green flag if you won't see the Barbie movie. It's the same 12% that said it's a green flag if you're MAGA Republican, isn't it? Okay. If they watch reality dating shows, 68% say it doesn't matter. 26% say it's a red flag, and 6% say it's a green flag. If they are so unbothered they never ask for details, 43% say it doesn't matter. 51% said red flag, and 6% says green flag. If they frequently post on social media, 76% say it doesn't matter. 19% see it as a problem. 5% say it's awesome. And if they have no hobbies, 62% say red flag. We're almost done here. I know I've spent a while on this survey. I think it's so interesting. And the headlines about Joe Rogan, it's like, there's so much more interesting stuff in here. I wish that some of the reporters had actually dug into this. The other thing is because somebody sent out a press release about this survey. That's what happened. Somebody sent out a press release and they wrote it. This is how all these reporters work. They just work off of press releases. They're not real journalists. They don't go and investigate. They were so lazy, they didn't even go to the survey itself and write their own article. They just took the press release about Joe Rogan and they all wrote the same headline and the same article. Can you imagine? This is the survey that launched all those headlines. It's no coincidence they all had the same headline, the same body of the article, hundreds of articles. That's because they're lazy. They don't do their job. They write off of press release. So somebody wrote a press release and said, hey, here's this survey. It shows that the majority of women, of young people, think it's a red flag to listen to Joe Rogan. And here's some key points about that. And then they all freaking wrote the same article. And they were so lazy, they didn't even, it was easy for me to look up the raw data here. They didn't even do this because they could have written all kinds of articles about this if they had. I looked for other articles about this. I only found a couple. And they didn't go into any of the interesting details. Journalists suck. Okay. Which statement best describes what you think about canceling? Again, half of these people voted for Biden. People who are answering these questions. So they're lefties, right? They're easily manipulated and brainwashed, young and gullible, naive young people, some of them. Which statement best describes what you think about canceling? 28% say it's a common and serious problem. 20% say it happens, but concern is overblown. 20% say it doesn't happen. People who behave problematically rarely face long-term consequences. 24% say it's really just an accountability for problematic behavior. So here we go. 44% basically downplay, which 44% right in line with what we know. 45% of these people are Biden voters. They're leftists. 44% of them say canceling isn't really a problem. It's just consequences for problematic behavior. How closely have you followed stories about each of the following big events? And you can see, in terms of very closely, they are following number one, or actually tied for number one, Trump's indictments and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then the Maui wildfires and SAG-AFTRA strike, the Barbie movie, Barbenheimer, the investigation into Hunter Biden way down here at 14%. Right above Taylor Swift's Eras tour. And then some celebrity shooting, some other celebrity sentenced to prison for shooting Megan Thee Stallion, Beyonce's Renaissance tour, Jonas Hill's text to ex-girlfriend, what? Tom Sandoval, Vanderpump Rules cheating scandal, what? I don't know that one either. Okay, but the things that's dominating their leftist media, Trump, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and Donald Trump indictments. That's it. Not surprising. Do you think the Barbie movie is 47% say just a movie? 31% say it's feminist. 14% say not sure. 6% say propaganda, and 2% say sexist. Which words would you use to describe Taylor Swift? 55% talented artist. Oh my. This tells you who we're dealing with. I'm sorry. I don't know enough about her to be that dismissive. I shouldn't be so dismissive. I've heard some of her music. I don't maybe she's talented and it's obscured in the song, but I don't. If you think she's talented, tell me what. Is it the lyric writing? Is it the voice or what? She might have a nice voice. I haven't really paid that close attention, so I apologize. But talented artist. No. I wouldn't put that number one. 55% of them say talented artist. 44% say smart businesswoman. Yeah, probably. 42% say overrated. 29% say cultish. 21% say girl boss. 17% say cringe. 16% say one of the best American songwriters ever. 13% say problematic. They have this question, how would you describe the difference between Gen Z and millennials? And you have to go to that link again and look at the answers, which we might do if we have time at the end. But I'm going to skip it for now. Do you think the criticisms aimed at the concept of being woke? Here we go. Oh, wait. I clicked on that. Hold on. Let me go back. Oh, no. We just got to the woke question. Do you think the criticisms aimed at the concept of being woke, and they put it in scare quotes because they don't really believe in it, right? The people writing this. They're the type who are like, "None of you people who criticize woke can even define it," and blah, 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 blah. Do you think the criticisms aimed at the concept of being woke could potentially lead to violence against the following groups? Please select all that apply. 63% say yes. The criticisms aimed at being woke, the criticisms of woke could lead to violence against 63% say people who identify as LGBTQ plus. So they are out here teaching young people basically. They're impressing upon young people that any criticism of woke is a threat of violence or potential threat of violence against LGBTQ plus 2AI, whatever community. 61%, very close, say people of color. It's a threat against people of color to criticize woke. 59% say it could lead to violence against social activists. 52% say it could lead to violence against women. 45% say the criticism could lead to violence against young people. And then we go on into influencers, what? 24%. But here, this is crazy, I think. Criticisms of woke, they've done a good job of making young people skeptical of criticisms of woke. It's, "Oh, I can't listen to that. It could evoke violence against gays and people of color and women." So then if you break down the demographics, this was the first question we saw when we were looking at just the questions, not the answers. Of this survey, just a couple things, and we're gonna back out of this now, but 43% of the people who took this survey are men, 45% are women, 5% are trans, and 6%, more than the trans category, 6% are the imaginary non-binary. 1% are other. That's pretty funny. It's pretty evenly split here between the age groups between 18 and 34. And then the biggest percentage of these people live in the South. 38% live in the South. Only 16% of these live in the Northeast. What? 25% live in the West. The majority of them have received either some college or a 2-year college degree or a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree. It's the majority. 58% of the people who took this survey are white. 17% are, wow, I can't believe they didn't put Latinx here. Teen Vogue, you're slipping. They put Hispanic or Latino /A, Latina. 17% Latinx. 14% Black or African American. 8% Asian. 1% American Indian. Then they have some other race breakdowns. Party identification. 25% of the people who took the survey identify as strong Democrats. 25% identify as strong Democrats. Only 13% identify as strong Republicans. Then you've got 15% who say they're weak Democrats. 7% say they're weak Republicans. 15% say they're independently leaning Democrats. 8% say independently leaning Republicans. And 17% right in the middle say they're pure independents. So again, we already knew this, but this is a majority Democrats here. 55% of the people who took this survey identify as some kind of Democrat. 55%. 17% as independent, and only 28% identify as some kind of Republican. Okay. We're gonna stop share. I'm gonna stop sharing this now. I did want to open in case we want to look at it. I'm gonna open this, but I'll stop sharing it for now, and we can look through some of these answers later if we want to, because I wanted to see. Oh, here we go. The question one of the questions where they had to answer it themselves, like, how would you describe the difference between Gen Z and millennials? Here's some of their answers. Let me just put this on the let me put this back on the screen. I thought I was gonna have to do a lot more sorting, but it's right here on the left. I don't know if you guys can see this. Oh, wait, look, I can make this one larger. So, how would you describe the difference between Gen Z and millennials? Somebody said 9/11. That's a good short answer. Somebody said question mark? That was a that was an 18 to 24-year-old. Um, a consequence of being chronically online, Gen Z lacks tact and self-awareness. Oh, sorry, the difference between Gen Z and millennials, not Gen X, sorry, Gen Z and millennials. So, a consequence of being chronically online, Gen Z lacks tact and self-awareness, and millennials have grown to be more nihilistic. A cultural divide that exists due to the separation of generations due to the internet coming of age. A generational difference marked mostly by prevalence of the internet and social media during childhood. A wide rift. Abject rejection of the other. Wow. Age, everyone just says age. It's an age gap. Age mostly, although Gen Z is even more progressive statistically speaking than millennials and are absolutely more politically active. Really? Because I've been seeing the opposite. I've been seeing that Gen Z is more conservative, but I don't know. I think it remains to be seen. Age and socioeconomic placement, age and maturity, growing up through different times. This person says Gen Z is more chill. Gen Z has 0 fucks to give. Millennials still think there's some hope for the world, whereas Gen Z has given up. Gen Z sounds like Gen X in this answer. Amount of time spent and influence from what's online, arbitrary. This person says, as a millennial, I love Gen Z. As a millennial, I don't really care about the difference. Talking about the differences between generations separates us further. This person says, as far as I'm aware, millennials didn't even realize they were getting screwed until they left high school or even college. Generation Z saw it. Uh, this person is Gen Z, the person who answered, and they're Latina, Latinx. Some people are just saying tech savviness. Gosh. This person says both groups are making positive changes for society. Gen Z is able to take what millennials started and move it to the next level. That person's white and a strong Democrat who voted for Biden. They describe themselves as liberal. Okay. Computer literacy, one says. Darker humor says another. I'm going to stop sharing that. Well, thank you guys for sitting through that poll with me, that survey. I just thought that headline, all of that started because I read that Joe Biden headline, not Joe Biden, Joe Rogan headline. And I was just very curious about where it came from and who funded the survey and what questions they asked and how that particular part of a question got put into headlines. And it definitely shows you how the journalists, they all crib off each other. They all crib off of press releases. They just send a press release and they just write it. They don't actually do their job, of course. So that was interesting. And then, yeah, Pirate Tomsky, thank you for the super chat. £5 says, I've got to say, a lot of the stuff on here isn't that bad. Usually younger stuff overall, but I've had some faith restored. LOL. That's great. I've had some faith restored too. Like, I mean, where they're answering that they're favorable for communism and socialism and stuff, that's pretty, like, that's disturbing. But when you look at what they're most concerned about and they say, what are the most important issues, that's where the real world stuff comes through. And in the survey, they're all saying the most important stuff is the economic stuff. Yeah. So, anyway, I wanna, when I post this, I might do one of the alternate headlines about survey says most popular podcast among young people is the Joe Rogan podcast. That could have been the headline of this. I think I'll do that. Anyway, thank you for sitting through the survey with me or sitting and enjoying it with me. And Mudcat says, great discussion in a review of a survey. Glad to be here today. Well, I'm glad you sat through it with me. This is why people don't take the time to look into stuff though, because it takes a lot of time to read through all that and figure out, what's really being said here. And if you're not a geek and you're not that interested in it, you're not, and if you are, but you don't have time, you're not going to do it. And it used to be that, at least I thought, maybe I was wrong. Maybe you've never been able to rely on journalists, but when I was younger, I thought you could rely on journalists to do that for you, where they summarize it, they read through it, they do an article about it, and they tell you, here's what's in this survey, and here's the meaty parts, here's the interesting parts. And you can't rely on them to do that anymore. And instead, they all go and write from a press release these hit pieces on Joe Rogan from that survey, when they could have written something very interesting about Gen Z and millennials and stuff, and they didn't. Michael, 4.99. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much, Michael. He says, thank you for the great show. Well, I appreciate it. And Pirate says, hit the like button on the way out, peeps. Yes, please do. Keri's back in the room. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Oh, because I'm looking at the chat again. Yeah. Yeah, I was like super into I get into some things like that. I get really just pulled into it, like the rabbit hole, and I want to read. I'm like, I have to read this survey right now. So I figured I would show it to you. Oh, Pirate gifted 10. What does that mean? You gave 10 memberships? Thank you so much. How cool is that? Thank you, Pirate. He says, oh, you were mesmerized by the survey. I was. I have a kind of a, not ADHD, because if you say that, people will try to put you on some kind of med, but that thing where I can be distracted easily, but I can also be highly absorbed on one little task. And some of you probably experienced something similar. You know what I'm talking about. And yeah, when you get really into something, you get really into it. I wanted to show you guys something in the background. We started, so since we got home from Europe, and we're just hanging out now, so I'll tell you about this. We got home. We've been cleaning. This house needs a lot of it. We're still in the middle of construction in a lot of rooms. There's a lot of dust everywhere all the time, sawdust, whatever. And then I've been unpacking Halloween decorations and stuff. And my friend Karen crocheted these for me last year, but I think I took a picture, but I didn't have them on the show to show you. Aren't these cool? Because I know there's so many knitters and crocheters who watch you program. I figured I would show you. It's these cool little fall Halloween trolls. This one's got like a candy corn hat. Isn't it cool? And then I think that's the woman. I'm assuming their gender. And then this is the guy. She crocheted this little guy who's got these sort of Halloween colors. This one, his hat comes off it. I think that's a mistake. But anyway, Nomies. Is that what they are? Anyway, I figured I'd put these back here. We're going to be doing Mystery Chris and I this Wednesday. We're very likely going to have a guest. We'll let you know. But after that, starting in October, every Wednesday night for Pop Culture, which Pop Culture is every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Central with my friend Mystery Chris. We're going to be doing some spooky topics, some creepy topics. I'm so excited about it. I hope you'll tune in. I love October. It is my favorite month. fall is my favorite season, and just I don't know, I'm in a good mood. I hope you guys are in a good mood and getting your decorations out. And yeah, how's Ratty Raccoon? Oh, Texas Sheep Lady. So the raccoon is still in the walls. Really quickly, ADL says, I've tried learning to knit, but I can't. ADL, you should check out, I don't know if they're here today, but you should check out some of the knitting podcasts, like Politically Incorrect Knitters. You should meet some of those ladies. Some of them hang out here in the chat, like Ann Pinkova. She is one of the hosts on that show. Meet some of the knitters. Therese here, she's a knitter. They can point you towards resources to help if you want to learn. Rocky the raccoon is still in the wall, and I heard him yesterday. And so last night we were going to open up the holes and try to lure him out, but my husband was working and he got home late, and we had a terrible thunderstorm here and lightning and everything, so we didn't go out there and do that. So now that this show is over, we're about to go do battle with the raccoon. We're about to unseal the holes, and then I have a live trap, and people were very kind online. They suggested things like that cats don't eat, because last time I used a live trap, which is like over 6 months ago, I caught the neighbor's cat. I didn't catch the raccoon. And so they said, well, put stuff in the trap that the cats don't like, but raccoons like peanut butter. So I'm going to put peanut butter in there. Tiger also likes peanut butter, so I hope he doesn't go in there. But we have to lure him out of the walls and before we reseal the holes, obviously, because I don't want him dying in there and our house stinking forever. So yeah, thank you, Lissa. She says try peanut butter. But I should put up pictures of what this raccoon did, because I wasn't kidding. When I did the show with Mr. Chris, we were talking about it. The 2 holes, our house, we're renovating it. For anyone that doesn't know, we bought this really old house and it needs a lot of work top to bottom and the bottom to top. The first thing we did was we hired a crew. We leveled the house, because a lot of Texas houses up here in Beam, it needed to be leveled. And that was a big expense. That was the first thing we did. And then we had plumbers come in, electricians. We installed heating and air, plumbing. We did, my husband and I insulated the attic, and then we've been renovating the rooms one by one. We have now run out of the budget we had, so we're moving more slowly, because we're basically saving for like a room at a time, and then we do that room. And that means our outside, the porch is like, the inside is beautiful, gorgeous pine, and it's shiplap. It's just really strong bones, but the outside has a lot of rot and water damage. And so we were hoping to save that outside till later, but we might have to step it up now, because we have these 2 holes in the porch where the raccoon and squirrels, presumably too, are getting in the walls. So that's how this all started. And we had sealed them and bolted plywood over them. And I'm telling you, because we were gone for 5 weeks in Europe, came back, it looked like a human had taken a crowbar to that wood. It's the raccoon. He really wanted in the house again. He was like, they're gone. I'm moving back in. Somebody says, try eggs. Raccoons like eggs. Oh, okay. I'm going to try that. I'm going to put I'm going to put an egg out there with peanut butter on it. We have to get rid of this guy. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Thanks for listening to the raccoon saga. And I hope you have a great rest of your Monday. And I will see you Wednesday for Pop Culture, Mr. Chris, 8:00 Central, if you want to come hang out. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, share, or leave a comment if you would like. That helps with the algorithm. And I'll see you later. Bye, guys.